It's 4 p.m. in Washington, D.C. We're 32 hours away from a government shutdown and negotiations have stalled. The House of Representatives is out of session. Speaker Mike Johnson says they already passed a 7-week continuing resolution to fund the government, so the ball's in the Senate's court. House Democrats are on their way back to Washington right now. All 213 are going to meet to chart their path forward, and that's why we're in this car. We're going to the airport to pick up Texas Democratic Congressman Henry Cuellar to discuss his party strategy. Thanks for having us. Appreciate it. All right, so let me start off by asking you, you may or may not have seen this because it happened when you were in the plane, but Chuck Schumer has asked a small group of Senate Democrats if they would be okay approving a 10-day CR if President Trump promises to negotiate on Affordable Care Act subsidies, which of course are going to expire at the end of the year. If they did that, it would need to go back to the House. Does something like that get your vote?
You know, actually, I was sitting down with a senator, and I asked him, because I saw that we do have Wi-Fi on the phone, on the plane, and he said he would prefer to have 7 instead of 10 days so we can, you know, still talk about it. Would I look at something like that? Yes, if there was something that would tell us that there will be a negotiations on the health care.
So help us understand, because Democrats want an extension of the ACA subsidies, and you also want to reverse the Medicaid cuts that were passed in the One Big Beautiful Bill. Why does that need to be in a continuing resolution when you would need to get that into a full-year appropriations package anyway?
Yeah. Well, look, if you look at the shutdowns we've had since the 1980s, a lot of those shutdowns have been under Republicans. Ronald Reagan had 3 shutdowns. I think the current president has 2. This might be the 3rd one. And if you recall that 35-day shutdown that we had, the last one, it was over what? Border wall, which is something that could have been done in the appropriations. And eventually it was done in the appropriations itself. I think this is one way that we can get to the table. And I think it's very important to understand that the health care is something that we need to protect.
The current 7-week package, which give you until November 21st, and the House Appropriations Committee, albeit on a partisan basis, has approved all 12 appropriations bills sent on the House floor, and the Senate has approved 3 of the 12 appropriations bill on a very bipartisan basis. So do you think that's solid progress, where if you had until November 21st, you don't think Congress could get something done, or do you?
Well, look, we could have done this appropriations a long time ago. I sit on the appropriations committee. When I first started, I was told, Henry, now that you're a member of the appropriations, keep in mind that there are Democrats and there's Republicans in Congress, and then you have appropriators. This time, it was just not the same. Everything was very partisan instead of the bipartisan type of negotiations I've seen in the past. So again, we'll get there. It's always a little dance to get there, but we'll get there.
Let's talk about the OMB memo. I know you saw it. It's a big deal. The Office of Management and Budget sent a memo to departments and agencies. It says agencies are directed to use this opportunity to consider reduction in force or RIF notices for all employees in programs, projects, or activities that aren't consistent with the president's priorities. It was that exact concern that got Senate Democrats to give the green light in March to prevent a government shutdown. Why is it different this time?
Well, again, it's unprecedented to say that you're going to have mass layoffs. We've never seen this before. And what we're seeing is the other side basically is trying to put the pressure on Democrats to just cave in and do whatever they want to. I really think that what we ought to do is sit down and work this out. Look, there are so many ways that we can work this out. I know we can. We've done it in the past, but again, the last time we were dealing with the border wall, it was a 35-day shutdown, and I hope that we don't get in that same type of situation.
It appears that part of the decision to demand these Affordable Care Act subsidies now was based on polling. And there's one poll from the Data for Progress that reveals 59% of voters would blame President Trump and congressional Republicans for a shutdown, and that voters overwhelmingly support the Affordable Care Act extension. But here's the question. This poll only shows that the voters support the Affordable Care Act subsidies. It doesn't necessarily show that they support a shutdown to get them, and it doesn't necessarily show that they need them to be in a continuing resolution as opposed to the final appropriations bill. How do you know then that this is the right path?
Well, look, when people get their notices that they're not going to have any more insurance, it's going to be real. It's not going to be a process whether you add it on a CR or you do it in a regular appropriations. It becomes real. When a government shuts down and then on top of that you have high costs because of tariffs, you have utility prices going up, grocery prices going up because of tariffs, and then on top of that, they get an insurance notice that they don't have any more insurance, or their Medicaid is going to be cut, or their Medicare eventually will be cut. This doesn't become a process question. It becomes something real to the voters.
Let me ask you this. That poll that I just cited is from a progressive firm. And it even says polling that empowers progressive activists. I mean, that's their motto. So when you get polls like that from a partisan firm, do you feel that it is emblematic or truly represents all of America or just a specific subset?
Well, I've always I've seen polls from the left, from the right, but I always go on trying to get the pulse of the community. And all I know is my area is one of the most uninsured areas, districts in the whole country. And this is why I feel that healthcare, Medicaid, Medicare, the Obamacare are things that people really care about.
The government is currently being funded by a continuing resolution, and it has been all year, which of course it goes back to 2024, and that brings us to President Biden. And that is something that some conservatives like Thomas Massey and Chip Roy, they have talked about. They say, we don't want to keep this moving forward because this is Biden's budget. Does that make you want to support it at all, knowing, well, listen, this isn't ideal, but at least it's a budget that was passed under the Biden administration?
Well, it wasn't really passed by Biden himself. It was passed by Congress. So I always look at, and I do joke around with my Republican friends, you do know that every time you do a CR, it's a Biden, it was done under Biden. I'd rather just have Congress do it the way we've always done it, in a bipartisan way, pass an appropriation bill or 12 appropriation bills.
Let me ask you this. CRs are horrible for national security. I know you have expertise in this. So if someone comes to you and says, why would you vote against a CR where even if you disagree with the substance of the CR, you still know what it means for the Pentagon, you still know what it means for the Border Patrol and a lot of these other important agencies. What's your response to that?
Well, it's a very simple response. Look, we've seen different issues come up during appropriations. And appropriations is one of those processes that I think we've passed only all 12 bills probably 4 times in the last, 30, 40, 50 years. We've always had CRs. And again, we will go ahead and fund the appropriations. It might not be right now, but we will get it funded. And by the way, also under the big, beautiful bill, I think the Department of Defense got a big bump also.
All right, so we're not too far away from the Capitol here. We're starting to approach. Let me ask you, you're about to go into this meeting with all 213 House Democrats. What does Leader Jeff Fries need to say to make sure everybody is unified and on the same team here and ensure that a purple district Democrat doesn't say, hey, you know what, I don't want to take a chance on this. This could come back to haunt me in 2026.
Yes, and we saw that in 2019 when we had a government shutdown. And I think I'm able to explain it well to the public in my district about government shutdowns and when you have to stand up for something. I mean, you don't just cave every time there's a threat of a government shutdown. And we don't want to have a government shutdown. But I think people understand that I'm one of those that I stand for, where we put people first, country first, instead of putting party first. And that's unfortunately what happens here in Washington, D.C. Sometimes by Democrats, sometimes by Republicans, that they put party first. But people understand that I always put country first.
Well, thank you very much, Congressman Cuellar. We appreciate you having
so
us for the ride from the airport.
Thank you, thank you.
I'm Ray Bogan for Straight Arrow News. For more reporting straight from our nation's capital, download the SAN app.